My sister looked me straight in the eye at the courthouse and said, "You can cry later. This day belongs to me," while stealing my wedding venue and even my date. What she didn't know was, she had no idea who my fiancé really was. And the ending? Absolutely perfect. My entire life, I lived in Amber's shadow, constantly giving way. But nothing prepared me for the day my own family conspired to steal my wedding, handing it to her on a silver platter. What unfolded next wasn't just heartbreak. It was a chilling revelation that made me question everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the people I called family. Growing up, being Olivia, the older sister, always felt like a competition I never even signed up for. I try to be supportive, really, but our parents they always seemed to put Amber first. My achievements? A polite nod. Amber's average grades? Full-blown celebrations. It wasn't that they didn't love me, but their love for her just burned brighter, more visibly. So, as soon as I could, I built my own life. I poured everything into my career, eventually landing my dream job as a creative director in Chicago. My work became my identity, my colleagues, my chosen family. I was so good at crafting stories for other people, I never saw how broken my own family's story truly was. Then I met Ryan Collins at an advertising conference. Tall, with these piercing blue eyes and an easy confidence. He just walked up to me after my presentation and said, "Your understanding of human connection is remarkable." We clicked instantly. Coffee turned into dinner as we discovered shared passions for things like architectural photography and obscure foreign films. Within weeks, we were inseparable. Ryan had this intense way of focusing solely on me. He made me feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in my life. "You're extraordinary, Olivia," he'd whisper. Most people don't recognize what they have in front of them. But looking back, there were always these little things. 6 months in, I realized I knew surprisingly little about his past. He'd just deflect. Vague answers, quick subject changes. His family? No longer in contact. Social media was practically non-existent. Friends were mostly business contacts I rarely met twice. He'd say, "My work requires discretion. High-profile clients value privacy." It made sense, given his job as a CEO, and honestly, the mystery made what little he did share feel even more intimate, more special. When I introduced him to my parents and Amber at Thanksgiving, my mom absolutely gushed. "He's so accomplished, Olivia. And handsome, too." Ryan charmed them all. Amber, though? She watched him with this undisguised interest, asking really pointed questions about his income, his lifestyle. It made me cringe. "Your sister seems very curious about my finances," Ryan remarked later, his tone light, but his eyes guarded. "That's just Amber," I sighed. "She's always been focused on status." 8 months later, Ryan proposed. On a private beach at sunset, with a photographer he'd hired. It was like something out of a movie. The ring? A 3-carat emerald-cut diamond, breathtaking. "You're my future, Olivia," he told me. "I never thought I'd meet someone who understands me like you do." I was floating. When I called my parents with the news, my mom's first question was about Amber. "Has Amber heard yet?" She's been so down about her relationship troubles with Jason. "Maybe hold off posting until I can tell her personally. You know how sensitive she can be." It was the same old pattern, but I was too happy to let it touch me. Ryan and I immediately started planning our wedding. We found the perfect venue, Lakeside Gardens. They'd had a cancellation for June 15th next year. An elegant glass structure overlooking the water, blooming with early summer flowers. "It's meant to be," I told him. That date opened up the day after we got engaged. As the wedding planning progressed, though, Ryan started acting strangely. Tense whenever my family was involved. He'd check his phone constantly at dinners, made excuses to leave early twice. When I suggested his business partner, James, as a groomsman, he flat out refused. Complicated dynamics, he'd just say, "Let's keep this day about us." Honestly, I should have questioned those red flags. But I was swamped with wedding binders, color swatches, and my mom's relentless attempts to involve Amber in every decision. "Shouldn't your sister help choose the bridesmaid dresses? She has such a good eye." "Mom, Amber isn't even a bridesmaid," I'd remind her. I'd asked my college roommates and work friends. This led to a week of angry texts from Amber, feeling excluded. So, reluctantly, I invited her into the bridal party. Ryan watched all this with this calculating look I didn't understand then. Your family has interesting patterns, he noted after one particularly frustrating call with my mom. They seem determined to make Amber central to your life events. It's always been this way, I admitted. Sometimes I think they had me just to practice for their real daughter. He pulled me into his arms, kissing my head. Then they're fools who don't see the treasure they have, he whispered. But I do. Those words were my anchor, holding me steady against the rising tide of family tension. What I couldn't know then was that Ryan had his own plans. Plans that would ultimately expose truths about my family, and himself, that none of us were prepared to face. 6 months before our wedding, the subtle shifts started. Hairline cracks in fine china. At first, so small I questioned myself, but then they grew undeniable. Amber started calling me daily about wedding details. Unprecedented interest from someone who'd always been indifferent to my happiness. Her questions always circled back to vendors, costs, and especially Ryan's contributions. So, he's covering the bar and band completely? She'd ask. That must be, what, 20,000? His business must be doing very well. I was uncomfortable. We're both contributing, I'd say. Why the sudden interest? Just happy for my big sister, she'd reply, but it felt performative. Can you send me your Pinterest board again? I want to see all your ideas. A week later, Amber called in tears. She and Jason, her boyfriend of 3 years, broke up. They'd been talking marriage, so the timing was brutal for her. I just feel so alone now, she sobbed. Everyone's moving forward except me. My compassion kicked in. I invited her to stay with us for the weekend. Ryan and I tried to cheer her up, movies, takeout. But instead of wallowing, Amber seemed composed. She asked Ryan detailed questions about his background and business. He answered smoothly, but later, he commented, "Your sister seems very interested in my work." Almost like she's conducting an interview. 3 weeks after that devastating breakup, Amber introduced a new boyfriend at my parents' anniversary dinner. Michael Patterson. Polished, articulate, and he knew everything about investment strategies, just like Ryan. Even more striking, his hobbies, architectural photography, foreign cinema. The very interests Ryan had mentioned on our earliest dates. How did you two meet? I asked, feeling Ryan stiffen beside me. At a coffee shop downtown, Amber said, touching Michael's arm possessively. It was an instant connection. Sometimes you just know, right? Throughout dinner, Michael directed these pointed questions at Ryan about financial regulations and market projections. Ryan answered professionally, but grew more withdrawn. When Amber mentioned they'd already discussed moving in together, my mom clasped her hands in delight. This is wonderful. When you know, you know. It was a level of instant approval she'd never given any of my relationships. Later, I saw my parents and Amber huddled on the patio, voices lowered, scattering when Ryan or I approached. Just catching up, sweetheart, my mom said, changing the subject when I asked. How are those wedding plans coming? You know, flexibility is important. Sometimes things need to change for everyone's benefit. The comment struck me as odd, but I brushed it off. Ryan, though, was unusually quiet on the drive home. Your sister's new boyfriend seems very familiar with my industry, he finally said. Has she mentioned how long they've actually known each other? Before I could answer, his phone buzzed. He frowned. Work emergency, he muttered, pulling over to type a lengthy response. Another warning sign ignored. The next week, Amber insisted on joining me for a meeting with my florist. She arrived with a portfolio of ideas, suspiciously similar to my own carefully curated selections. She dominated the conversation, suggesting alternatives, repeatedly using phrases like, "we were thinking," when discussing my wedding. During a coffee break, she accidentally spilled her latte all over my wedding planner, ruining months of notes and swatches. Her apologies felt performative, especially when she immediately offered to take over some planning aspects to reduce my stress. A few days later, coming home early from work, I found Amber in my apartment. She claimed she was just dropping off a wedding magazine. Flipping through it later, I found pages marked with post-its noting exact replicas of my wedding concept. Same color scheme, similar dress style, even cake designs. In the margins were calculations and notes about vendor contacts. I was disturbed. I called my best friend, Tara. I think Amber is copying my entire wedding plan, I explained. It's like she's creating a blueprint of everything I've chosen. You know how she's always been with your stuff, Tara reminded me gently. Remember when she wore your prom dress to her own prom? Or when she applied to your dream college after you were accepted? This seems like classic Amber, just on a bigger scale. But why would she duplicate a wedding when she's only been dating Michael for weeks? It makes no sense. Unless, Tara hesitated, unless she's planning something more immediate. Watch your back, Liv. Something doesn't feel right. 2 days later, Ryan came home from a business dinner looking troubled. Work stress, he said, changing the subject when I pressed. That night, I woke to find him having a hushed phone conversation in our bathroom. It's not time yet, I heard him whisper. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. He claimed it was an international client, different time zone. His explanation was reasonable, but doubt had taken root. Both my sister and my fiancé were behaving strangely, and some invisible threads seemed to connect them. Then came the text from my mother, family emergency dinner tonight, 7 p.m. Everyone must attend. No explanation, just that imperious summons I knew so well. Should we bring anything? I texted back. Just yourselves and open minds, she replied, cryptically. I spent the day distracted, running through possibilities. When I shared the message with Ryan, he seemed unsurprised, almost expecting it. Whatever it is, we'll handle it together, he said, squeezing my hand with a pressure that didn't quite reach his eyes. We arrived at my parents' house to find Amber's car and an unfamiliar luxury sedan I assumed belonged to Michael. The atmosphere was tense, but with an undercurrent of anticipation that utterly confused me. My father poured drinks without meeting my eyes. My mother fussed with appetizers. Mom, what's going on? I finally asked. You said there was an emergency. My father cleared his throat. Olivia, we need to discuss something important. Something that affects the whole family. Are you sick? Is someone sick? Panic fluttered in my chest. No, nothing like that, my mother interjected. It's about finances and timing. What followed was a carefully orchestrated revelation, obviously rehearsed. My father explained their investments had unexpected complications, significantly reducing their ability to contribute to my wedding. We still want to help, my mother added, guilt and determination warring on her face, just not in the way we originally planned. Before I could process this, Amber reached for Michael's hand, a look of barely disguised triumph on her face. Michael and I are engaged, she announced, flashing a diamond ring that looked shockingly similar to mine. It was so unexpected and romantic. 3 weeks of dating. I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. When it's right, you know, Michael replied smoothly, his arm sliding around Amber's waist. We don't want to wait. The pieces started falling into place with sickening clarity. That's why we wanted to talk about timing and resources, my mother continued. Given our financial situation and the fact that both our daughters are planning weddings. What Mom is trying to say, Amber interrupted, is that it makes sense to prioritize. Since Michael and I want to get married quickly, and you and Ryan have your careers established already, we thought you might consider postponing. Postponing our wedding? The one that's completely planned and paid for. I looked between them, waiting for someone to admit this was a cruel joke. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. We've discussed it as a family, he said, and we think it makes sense for Amber and Michael to take your date and venue. All the arrangements are perfect, and this way, we can still help finance one wedding properly. You've discussed it as a family, I repeated slowly. But Ryan and I weren't included in this family discussion about our wedding. We knew you'd be upset initially, my mother said, reaching for my hand, which I pulled away. But you've always been the reasonable one, Olivia. The practical one. The one who gives up what she wants. I finished for her. Amber's expression hardened. This is important to me. Michael and I need to get married quickly for his visa situation. It was the first I'd heard of any visa issues, and the explanation felt hollow. We don't have time to plan a whole new wedding, and yours is already perfect. So perfect, you want to steal it? My voice cracked. Not steal, my father interceded. Share. We've already spoken with the venue about transferring the reservation. I shot through my veins. You've already contacted my venue without talking to me first? We knew you'd be difficult about it, Amber sighed, as if my outrage was an inconvenient tantrum. That's why we took care of the logistics first. I turned to Ryan, expecting shared indignation. But he was just watching the scene with calculated interest. What do you think about all this? I asked him. It's unexpected, he said carefully. But family matters are complicated. Perhaps we should consider what's being proposed. His lukewarm response felt like another betrayal. I stood trembling, a mix of anger and hurt. This is unbelievable. You're actually trying to take my wedding day, my venue, everything I've planned for months. Amber rolled her eyes. You can cry later. This day belongs to me now. The casual cruelty of her words struck me like a physical blow. I looked at each of them, searching for any sign of shame, but found only determination. You've always done this, I whispered, always taken what's mine, and expected me to accept it graciously. But this is different. This is my wedding. My future with Ryan. A wedding can happen anytime, my mother insisted. Your sister needs this now. And what I need doesn't matter. What about what Ryan and I have planned and paid for? My father shifted uncomfortably. We'll reimburse your deposits eventually, once our financial situation improves. Eventually. The word was hollow, weighted with past broken promises. Ryan finally stood, placing a hand on my back. I think Olivia and I need time to discuss this privately. It's a significant request you're making. There's nothing to discuss, I insisted, pulling away from his touch. They've already decided. They've already started transferring arrangements behind our backs. Let's not make rash decisions, Ryan cautioned, his tone businesslike. Everyone's emotions are high right now. I stared at him, this man I'd agreed to marry, wondering why he wasn't more outraged on our behalf. Something in his composure felt wrong, disconnected from the betrayal. I need to leave, I announced, grabbing my coat. I can't be here right now. Olivia, don't be dramatic. Amber called after me. This is happening whether you approve or not. The deposit's already in our names. I stopped at the door, turning to face them one last time. You know what's ironic? I've spent my entire life accepting less so Amber could have more. I've stepped aside, stayed quiet, been the reasonable one. But this time, I won't bend. This time, you've gone too far. As I walked to my car alone, Ryan having chosen to stay behind to smooth things over, I felt something permanent breaking within our family. What I couldn't know then was that this painful fracture would ultimately expose truths about my family and Ryan himself that none of us were prepared for. The week that followed was a blur of betrayal, intensifying by the hour. My phone buzzed constantly with manipulative messages from my mom. Amber has already ordered invitations using your color scheme. Please don't make this more difficult. Your father and I raised you to be selfless. Why are you hurting your sister this way? After 3 days, I stopped responding. I couldn't stomach the gaslighting. Ryan's behavior remained baffling. Instead of support, he suggested we take the high road and find another venue. Family relationships are important, he insisted as I sobbed on our couch. Sometimes compromise is necessary. Asterisk compromise. Asterisk they stole our wedding. The venue had already confirmed they transferred our deposit to Amber's name without my permission. Ryan's expression flickered, then settled into practiced concern. They must have listed you both on the original contract. Unfortunate, but legally, there may not be much recourse. His detached, legal assessment felt like a punch to the gut. When I suggested fighting it, he discouraged it, calling it unnecessary conflict. Then came the congratulatory email from our photographer, thanking me for updating the bride's name and confirming they were excited to work with Amber and Michael on what was supposed to be my wedding day. Similar messages followed from the florist, caterer, and band. My family, or Amber, had systematically colonized every aspect of my carefully planned celebration. Confiding in Tara brought a momentary, furious relief. This is beyond sibling rivalry, she fumed. This is pathological. And your parents are enabling it. They've always favored her, but this is different. It feels calculated, I agreed. Like they planned this ambush together. And Ryan's reaction is just strange. Tara observed cautiously, most partners would be outraged on your behalf. Before I could defend him, a notification chimed. Amber had posted on Instagram, sometimes dreams come true in unexpected ways. So excited to share our perfect day at Lakeside Gardens on June 15th. #bride-to-be-bliss, #dream venue. The photo showed her in a bridal boutique, surrounded by dress options identical to styles I had bookmarked. The caption included details matching my wedding concept boards, down to the signature cocktails and first dance song. The calculated precision of her theft was stunning. Friends started tagging me, asking if we were having a double wedding. The public humiliation was unbearable. That evening, I discovered Ryan had deleted several password-protected files from our shared cloud storage, including financial documents related to wedding expenses. When confronted, he claimed it was to reduce stress and move forward positively. His explanation felt hollow, adding to my growing unease about his true motives. 2 days later, while out looking for stress relief, I ran into Amber at the same bridal salon where I'd ordered my dress. She was modeling a gown suspiciously similar to mine, surrounded by fawning attendants and my beaming mother. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, interrupting their champagne toast. Amber barely flinched. "Finalizing my wedding dress." "Obviously. You weren't responding to Mom's texts about returning your deposit, so I chose something similar." "Similar? That's practically identical to my dress. Are you actually trying to become me?" My mother intervened, ushering me toward the exit. "Olivia, please. You're making a scene." Amber chose this design independently. "It's not her fault you both have similar taste." "Similar taste?" I laughed bitterly. "She has studied and copied every single detail of my wedding. This isn't coincidence. It's obsession." Amber approached, her expression cold despite her bridal finery. "You always think everything is about you. Has it occurred to you that maybe I deserve this more? That maybe I've always deserved the best things more than you?" "What are you talking about? What could possibly justify stealing my wedding?" "I've always been their favorite," she stated with chilling certainty. "I'm just claiming what should naturally come to me first. You had your chance to shine. Now it's my turn. Maybe your precious Ryan understands that better than you do." Her cryptic reference to Ryan triggered alarm bells. "What do you mean by that?" Amber simply smiled, turning back to the mirrors. "Nothing. Just that sometimes people recognize where the real value in a family lies." That night, I came home earlier than expected from dinner with Tara to find our apartment empty. Ryan had texted he'd be working late, but his laptop was on the kitchen counter. When his phone buzzed, I glimpsed a text from an unsaved number. "Meeting confirmed. MP bringing documents. 10 p.m. Riverdale Hotel. MP Michael Patterson." The coincidence was too significant. Acting on impulse, a cold dread rising, I drove to the Riverdale Hotel. In the dimly lit bar, I spotted Ryan and Michael in deep conversation, heads bent over. Documents. Their body language screamed conspiracy, not new acquaintance. I watched as they exchanged papers, Ryan passing what looked like a USB drive. No awkwardness. They moved with the synchronicity of long-established collaborators. The final breaking point came the next morning. An ivory envelope arrived by courier. An elegant invitation to the wedding of Amber Matthews and Michael Patterson at Lakeside Gardens on June 15th. The design was an exact replica of the invitations I had custom created, down to the personalized monogram. The only difference, Amber's initials. Accompanying it was a handwritten note from Amber, "Hope you can attend as a regular guest. We've decided not to include you in the wedding party after your recent emotional outbursts. Maybe seek professional help before the big day." The calculated cruelty crystallized everything into a cold, clear resolve. This wasn't just about a wedding. Something deeper, more sinister, was happening. The coincidental connection between Ryan and Michael, their secret meeting, the methodical takeover of my wedding, my family's unnervingly unified front, it all pointed to a larger scheme I couldn't yet comprehend. I placed the invitation on my kitchen table and made a decision. It was time to discover what Ryan was hiding, what connection he had to Michael, and why my sister seemed so confident in claiming not just my wedding, but seemingly my entire life. That mysterious hotel meeting, Ryan and Michael's comfortable familiarity, it haunted me. It contradicted Ryan's claim that they'd only just met. Something was profoundly wrong. My professional instincts, honed from years of dissecting narratives, told me I was missing crucial pieces. My first real clue came accidentally. While searching for tax documents in Ryan's home office, I found a passport in the back of his desk drawer. It showed his familiar face, but bore the name Richard Collins, not Ryan. The birth date was different too. He was 4 years older than he'd claimed. When I questioned him that evening, Ryan dismissed it smoothly. "That's my official passport. Ryan is my preferred professional name. Many executives use variations for security reasons." It sounded plausible, but his eyes darted away too quickly, a tell I'd learned to recognize. That night, I waited until his breathing deepened. I carefully examined his phone. His password? My birthday. The device unlocked, remarkably devoid of personal history. No photos older than our relationship, minimal contacts, and an email app missing any messages beyond 6 months ago. It was as if Ryan Collins had materialized fully formed the day we met. I need help, I admitted to Tara over coffee the next morning. Something's seriously wrong with this whole situation. What kind of help? She asked, noting my exhausted appearance. Professional help. Do you still have contact with that private investigator your law firm uses? Tara's expression grew serious. You think Ryan is involved in something illegal? I don't know what to think anymore, I confessed, but I need facts, not more confusion. By that afternoon, I had hired Samuel Reeves, a former FBI agent specializing in financial fraud. His retainer depleted my personal savings, but I had a gut feeling this investment would be invaluable. Start with these, I instructed, giving him Ryan's claimed info and the passport details. And look into connections with Michael Patterson. I need to know if they knew each other before my sister allegedly met him. While I waited, I did my own online research. Ryan's company website listed impressive credentials, but deeper digging revealed those references couldn't be independently verified. His LinkedIn showed employment gaps, and his claimed Harvard MBA had no alumni record matching his details. 3 days later, Reeves called. Your fiancé is not who he claims to be, he stated without preamble. Ryan Collins is an identity created approximately 3 years ago. His real name is Richard Cowan, former CFO of Meridian Investments, who resigned suddenly amid an SEC investigation into fraudulent accounting practices. My stomach dropped. Fraudulent practices. He was never formally charged, but several investors lost millions. The case was settled privately, with Cowan agreeing to leave the financial sector permanently. But he's running a financial consulting firm now. I interjected. Exactly. Under a new name with carefully constructed credentials. It's sophisticated identity manipulation, just legal enough to avoid obvious fraud charges. And Michael Patterson? Any connection? That's where it gets interesting, Reeves continued. Patterson is actually Martin Petrovic, former legal counsel at Meridian, who helped structure the settlements that kept Cowan out of prison. They've worked together for years. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Ryan, or rather Richard, had been lying about his identity from the moment we met. Our entire relationship was built on carefully constructed falsehoods. But what was his ultimate goal? What could he want from me, from my family? There's more, Reeves added grimly. They've established several shell companies together over the past 2 years. The pattern suggests they're preparing for a significant financial move, possibly another investment scheme. Do you think my family is their target? We're not wealthy. Not directly wealthy, perhaps, but your father sits on the board of Westlake Credit Union, correct? That position comes with significant influence over lending decisions and access to high-value client information. The pieces formed a horrifying picture. Ryan had targeted me specifically for my family connections, particularly my father's position. Michael's sudden interest in Amber created additional access and legitimacy within our family structure. The wedding venue transfer, their manipulation of my parents, it wasn't about Amber's selfishness. These were calculated steps in a much larger, insidious scheme. I requested an emergency meeting with Reeves the following day. He presented documented proof, Ryan and Michael's true identities, their fraudulent business history, evidence of their ongoing partnership. Email records showed they had planned their approach to my family months before I even met Ryan. What's their endgame? I asked, staring at the damning evidence. Based on recent transactions and company formations, they appear to be establishing investment opportunities they'll likely present to your father's banking connections. Given their history, these will probably be sophisticated Ponzi schemes designed to extract maximum capital before collapsing. The confirmation of my worst fears left me numb. How do I stop them? That depends, Reeves said carefully. Are you willing to confront your fiancé directly, or would you prefer to gather more evidence before involving authorities? That night, I made the hardest decision of my life. Rather than immediately exposing Ryan, I would play along temporarily to gather conclusive evidence of his plans. This would require an impossible performance, pretending I remained ignorant while secretly documenting everything. When Ryan returned home, I greeted him with practiced normalcy, suppressing my knowledge of his betrayal behind a mask of routine domesticity. His kiss on my cheek felt like acid. His casual questions about my day, part of an elaborate charade we were both now performing for different reasons. I've been thinking about the wedding situation, I told him over dinner. Maybe you're right about finding another date. Family harmony might be worth the sacrifice. Relief flickered across his features. That's mature of you, Olivia. I've always admired your rationality. Will you help me explain my decision to Mom and Dad this weekend? Maybe we could join Amber and Michael for dinner, make peace with the situation. Absolutely, he agreed, too quickly. I'm sure we can all move forward positively. Over the next week, I gathered evidence methodically, maintaining my performance of acceptance. I installed recording software on our home computer, documented suspicious phone calls, and photographed documents Ryan carelessly left visible. Each discovery confirmed my worst fears, while simultaneously breaking my heart. The final confirmation came when I accidentally opened an email intended for Ryan. It contained detailed plans for approaching my father's banking clients with investment opportunities in non-existent development projects. The projected fraud exceeded $20 million, with Ryan and Michael set to disappear once payments cleared their offshore accounts. With sufficient evidence compiled, I finally confronted Ryan in our living room, laying out copies of the most damning documents on our coffee table. Richard Cowan, I said simply, watching his expression shift from confusion to calculation. Or do you prefer Ryan Collins when you're running investment scams? He recovered quickly, his charm activating like a defensive system. Olivia, whatever you think you found has an explanation. Yes, I changed my name after some unfortunate business complications. But that doesn't change who I am or how I feel about you. And how do you feel about me? I pressed. The daughter of a banking executive whose connections you've been planning to exploit since before we met? His posture stiffened. Our relationship is separate from business. I genuinely care for you. Like Michael genuinely cares for Amber? That's why you two orchestrated this entire scenario, right? Two couples, double the access to my father's professional network. Ryan's mask slipped, revealing cold assessment rather than emotional hurt. Your sister was always the easier target. So desperate for attention, so eager to compete with you. One conversation about your wedding plans and she was practically begging to take your place. So you used her jealousy, her need to outshine me. We simply recognized existing family dynamics and utilized them efficiently. His clinical description of their manipulation chilled me. Your parents were surprisingly eager to shift their support once Michael suggested his family's fictional investment opportunities. Were you ever planning to actually marry me? I asked, the last question that still mattered on a personal level. Ryan's hesitation before answering told me everything. Marriage would have provided certain legal protections for our financial arrangements, he finally admitted. But I did enjoy our time together, Olivia. You weren't just a means to an end. The calculated cruelty of his response crystallized my resolve. Get out, I whispered. Get your things and leave before I call the authorities with this evidence. You won't do that, he countered confidently. Exposing me means humiliating your family publicly. Your parents would lose standing in the community. Your sister's heart would break. You've spent your entire life protecting them, even at your own expense. You won't stop now. His certainty, his assumption that my lifelong pattern of sacrifice would continue, even in the face of this profound betrayal, sparked something new within me. For the first time, I saw clearly how my family's dynamic had made me vulnerable to manipulation. How my acceptance of always coming second had attracted a predator specifically looking for someone accustomed to putting others first. You're wrong, I replied, my voice steady. This time, the truth matters more than anyone's comfort, including mine. As Ryan gathered his essential belongings, warning me that this won't end well for anyone, I faced an impossible decision. How to protect my family from imminent financial fraud while revealing the painful truth that would shatter their trust in Amber's relationship and expose our parents' favoritism as the vulnerability it had always been. With Ryan's deception confirmed, I desperately needed to warn my family. My first impulse was to call my parents immediately, but experience told me they'd probably dismiss it as jealousy. This situation demanded irrefutable evidence, presented strategically. I spent 2 days compiling a comprehensive file, Ryan and Michael's true identities, their fraudulent history, their current scheme targeting my father's banking connections. It had official records, financial documents, and even communications between the men discussing their plans for my family. My first attempt at intervention went exactly as I feared. I called my parents, requesting an urgent meeting about Ryan and Michael. My mother immediately bristled. "Olivia, we understand you're upset about the wedding, but trying to sabotage your sister's relationship is beneath you," she scolded. "Michael comes from an excellent family. Your father has already discussed potential investment opportunities with him." "That's exactly what I'm worried about," I insisted. "I have documentation suggesting these investment opportunities may not be legitimate." "Based on what? Your personal investigation because you're jealous? Your father has been in banking for 30 years. I think he can recognize a sound investment." When I tried to explain the evidence, my father took the phone. "Enough, Olivia. Your behavior is becoming concerning. Perhaps you should speak with someone professionally about these conspiracy theories." Their dismissal, while frustrating, wasn't surprising. Their judgment was already compromised by Michael's manipulation and their own bias towards Amber. I needed a different approach. Next, I tried Amber directly, hoping that beneath her competitiveness, some sisterly bond remained. I invited her for coffee, framing it as a reconciliation. "I'm glad you finally accepted the situation," she said smugly, sitting across from me. "Michael said you'd eventually come around." "Actually, I wanted to share some concerning information I've discovered about Ryan and Michael," I replied, sliding a condensed version of my file across the table. "They aren't who they claim to be." Amber barely glanced at the documents. "Let me guess. They're secretly criminals targeting our family." "How convenient for your narrative. Just look at the evidence, Amber. Their real names, their history of financial fraud, the pattern of targeting families with banking connections." She pushed the file back. "This is pathetic, even for you. Creating fake documents because you can't stand that I'm marrying a successful man while yours turned out to be so understanding of family priorities. Michael warned me you might try something like this. He warned you because he knew I might discover the truth." I insisted. "Think about it. How did you meet him?" "Right after my engagement, at a coffee shop you never frequented. He knew all your interests because they matched what Ryan had learned about me. We have natural chemistry and shared interests." Amber snapped, standing. "Not everything is about you, Olivia. Some men just prefer women with actual personality instead of your constant people-pleasing." As she stormed out, I knew direct approaches wouldn't work. My family was too deeply entrenched in their perspectives, too thoroughly manipulated. They wouldn't accept the truth without incontrovertible, public proof. The solution hit me while reviewing Reeves' reports. Ryan and Michael were planning to present their fraudulent investment opportunity at Amber's rehearsal dinner, where my father had arranged for several bank colleagues to attend. This event would be their moment to secure commitments before disappearing with investor funds after the wedding. I needed to expose them publicly, in a setting where they couldn't control the narrative or dismiss the evidence. Timing was everything. Too soon, they'd regroup. Too late, innocent people would lose money. Working with Reeves, I compiled a presentation, focusing on factual evidence rather than personal betrayal. I also contacted Special Agent Lisa Harrington at the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. The evidence wasn't enough for immediate arrests, but it put Ryan and Michael on their radar. "We can monitor the situation," Agent Harrington confirmed. "But we need clear evidence of intent to defraud, preferably recorded solicitation of funds under false pretenses." "They're planning to pitch investors at my sister's rehearsal dinner next Friday," I explained. "I can wear a recording device." "That would help build our case," she agreed. "But understand, confronting them publicly comes with risks. These men have built their careers on manipulation. They won't surrender easily." I spent the intervening days in careful preparation, rehearsing what I'd say, anticipating their counterarguments. I also made peace with the likelihood that my relationship with my family might never recover. By exposing Ryan and Michael, I would also be exposing my parents' willingness to sacrifice my happiness and my sister's calculated betrayal. The rehearsal dinner was held at Lakeside Gardens, the very venue that should have hosted my wedding. Entering that space, seeing the decor that mirrored my original plans, brought a sharp pain I pushed aside to focus. I wore a recording device concealed in a brooch. Agent Harrington assured me it was undetectable. My parents greeted me with surprise and visible discomfort. "We weren't sure you'd come," my mother admitted. "Given the circumstances, I wouldn't miss my sister's rehearsal dinner," I replied simply. Amber kept her distance, clearly having warned others about my unstable behavior. Ryan and Michael worked the room confidently, focusing particularly on my father's banking colleagues, distributing elegant folders for Patterson Collins Development, their fictitious venture. I waited until after dinner when Michael stood to make a toast and transition into his investment presentation. As he welcomed guests, I quietly moved to connect my laptop to the room's projector system, previously arranged with the venue's technical staff. Before my future brother-in-law continues, I announced, interrupting Michael mid-sentence, I have something important to share with everyone. Something that affects everyone in this room, particularly those considering investment opportunities. Olivia, this is inappropriate, my father warned, half rising. What I'm about to show you is factual information about Richard Cowan and Martin Petrovic, whom you know as Ryan Collins and Michael Patterson, I continued, activating the presentation. Both men have histories of financial fraud and are currently operating under false identities. The room erupted in confused murmurs as documents appeared on screen, SEC investigation records, news articles about Meridian Investments' collapse, and photographs of both men under their real names. This is absurd. Michael protested, looking to Ryan for support. Some kind of jealous vendetta. Ryan approached me, his voice low and threatening. Stop this now. You're making a serious mistake. The mistake, I replied, loudly enough for others to hear, was thinking I would protect your scheme to preserve family peace. The presentation continued with timeline evidence showing their coordinated approach to our family, followed by details of their current investment fraud. Banking professionals in the audience began examining the investment materials with new scrutiny, whispering among themselves. Amber stared at the screen in growing horror, especially as emails between Ryan and Michael appeared, discussing her as an ideal secondary target and leverage point for accessing senior banking relationships. Michael, tell me this isn't true, she pleaded, her voice small and uncertain. Before he could respond, Agent Harrington and two colleagues entered the room. Richard Cowan and Martin Petrovic, we'd like to speak with you regarding allegations of wire fraud and securities violations. What followed was chaos. Ryan tried to leave through a side exit, intercepted by FBI agents. Michael launched into a convoluted explanation about misunderstandings. My father's banking colleagues quickly distanced themselves, several quietly thanking me for the warning. Amid the commotion, I found myself face-to-face with Amber, tears streaming down her face. You knew, she accused. You knew and tried to tell me. I tried, I confirmed, without satisfaction. They targeted both of us. Used our family dynamics against us. But how could I have been so wrong about him? About everything. She collapsed into a chair, the elaborate engagement ring catching the light as she covered her face. My parents stood shell-shocked as their carefully orchestrated evening disintegrated. The perfect wedding they had prioritized over mine was revealed as part of an elaborate con. Their judgment exposed as fatally flawed before their social and professional circles. As Ryan was escorted past me, he paused. You could have walked away, he said quietly. Saved yourself the collateral damage. Unlike you, I replied, I don't abandon people, even when they've hurt me. In the aftermath, as guests departed and FBI agents collected statements, I felt no triumph or vindication. Only hollow exhaustion and the recognition that while the external threat was neutralized, the internal fractures in my family might never fully heal. The wedding was canceled amid scandal and embarrassment. Amber retreated to a friend's vacation home. My parents faced difficult questions about their judgment and priorities. And I was left to rebuild a life whose foundation had been thoroughly shaken, uncertain what relationship, if any, I still had with my family. In the weeks following the rehearsal dinner, a profound silence descended between me and my family. The FBI investigation expanded, revealing additional victims and fraudulent operations across 3 states. Ryan and Michael eventually accepted plea deals, Ryan facing 5 years in federal prison, Michael 3, along with significant financial penalties neither could pay. The immediate aftermath left me feeling hollow, not victorious. The apartment Ryan and I had shared felt contaminated by lies. Every object triggered memories, now tainted with doubt. Had any moment been genuine? Had any feelings been real? I threw myself into work, accepting a challenging new campaign that demanded long hours. Colleagues noticed my changed demeanor, the caution that had replaced my former openness. Tara worried I was hiding, not healing. "You're processing trauma," she reminded me over lunch, 3 months after everything collapsed. Not just relationship betrayal, but family betrayal too. That doesn't heal overnight. "Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice," I admitted. Exposing everything publicly hurt so many people beyond just Ryan and Michael. They were going to defraud innocent people, Olivia. "Your father's colleagues, they're investors. You prevented that. At the cost of my family relationships. Relationships built on unhealthy patterns that made you vulnerable to someone like Ryan in the first place," Tara pointed out gently. Maybe this breaking point was necessary. Her perspective helped. But true healing began when I received an unexpected job offer from Meridian Creative, a prestigious agency in Boston. Relocating meant leaving the physical spaces associated with my trauma, creating geographical and emotional distance from painful memories. Boston's unfamiliarity proved therapeutic. Without history shadowing every street corner, I could breathe again. My apartment overlooking the Charles River became a sanctuary of self-discovery, decorated solely for my pleasure, not compromised to accommodate another's preferences. 6 months into my new life, I received my first communication from Amber. A handwritten letter, no return address. "I don't expect forgiveness," she wrote, "but I need you to know I'm sorry. Not just for the wedding, but for a lifetime of taking without considering what I was taking from. Therapy is helping me understand the competition wasn't your creation, but my response to feelings of inadequacy. You were always the capable one. I wanted what you had without understanding the work you put into creating your life." The letter continued with painful self-reflection, acknowledging her role in enabling Ryan and Michael's scheme. She closed with, "I don't expect a relationship, but I needed you to know that I recognize the truth now, however late." I didn't respond immediately, needing time to process. But the letter marked a turning point in my healing, transforming abstract hurt into concrete acknowledgement I could finally examine and release. My parents' attempt at reconciliation came 3 months later through my father's awkward phone call. "Your mother and I have been doing some reflection," he began hesitantly. "We've realized our pattern of prioritizing certain things wasn't always fair to you." "It wasn't about fairness, Dad," I replied, surprising myself with the clarity I felt. "It was about seeing me. Really seeing me instead of seeing me in relation to Amber." His silence acknowledged the truth. "We'd like to visit if you're open to that." No expectations, just beginning a conversation. Their visit was strained, but significant. We avoided addressing the wedding directly, focusing instead on establishing new communication patterns. My mother brought photo albums I'd never seen, sharing stories from my childhood with a perspective that seemed genuinely interested in my experience, not comparing it to Amber's. "We made mistakes," she admitted as they prepared to leave. "Patterns we didn't recognize until everything fell apart. I'm sorry it took such dramatic circumstances to see what we were doing. I'm still working through it," I told them. "Honestly, I'm not ready for family holidays or pretending everything's fine. But I'm open to building something new, something healthier if you are." Professional success in Boston brought an unexpected personal connection when I collaborated with photographer Daniel Westfield on a major campaign. His genuine interest developed slowly, allowing trust to build gradually. Unlike Ryan's whirlwind intensity, Daniel's calm consistency gave me space to test my instincts about character and intention. "I have trust issues," I warned him on our 3rd date. "Recent experience with elaborate deception." "Trust is earned, not assumed," he replied. "I'm patient." His patience proved genuine. Over months, Daniel demonstrated integrity through actions rather than declarations. When I finally shared my full story, his response focused on my strength, not my victimization. "You protected people who hadn't protected you," he observed. "That says everything about your character." A year into our relationship, after meeting my parents during their 2nd visit and navigating that complexity with respectful boundaries, Daniel proposed with characteristic thoughtfulness. The ring was nothing like Ryan's ostentatious diamond, but a unique sapphire that reminded him of my resilience. "No pressure or timeline," he assured me. "We build this together at a pace that feels right for both of us." We married 18 months later in a small ceremony at a historic Boston library. My parents attended, their presence significant but not central. Amber did not attend, but sent a sincere note of congratulations and a donation to a fraud victims advocacy organization in our honor, a gesture that acknowledged our history while respecting our present boundaries. The wedding was entirely our own creation, without reference to past plans or others' expectations. Standing beside Daniel, exchanging vows we had written together, I realized how profoundly different authentic partnership felt from the performance of connection Ryan had orchestrated. 3 years after the catastrophic family dinner that had upended my life, I find myself in a place of unexpected peace. My relationship with my family remains a work in progress, defined now by careful honesty rather than assumed obligation. Amber and I exchange occasional emails, building a tentative connection based on adult recognition, not childhood patterns. The most important lesson emerged slowly, through therapy and reflection. Intuition speaks truth when we listen. I had sensed things were wrong with Ryan, with my family's behavior, with the entire situation. But years of conditioning had taught me to doubt my perceptions when they conflicted with others' narratives. Learning to trust my internal warning system became my most valuable growth. Today, when I look at the life I've built from the ashes of betrayal, I feel neither bitterness nor regret, but profound appreciation for the authentic connections now forming the foundation of my experience. The pain that once seemed unbearable became the catalyst for liberation from patterns that had limited me since childhood. True freedom, I've discovered, isn't found in escaping those who have hurt us, but in transcending the internal beliefs that kept us vulnerable to their manipulation. My sister stole my wedding with my parents' blessing, but in doing so, they inadvertently released me from the obligation to maintain unhealthy family dynamics. The truth about my fiancé destroyed her plans, but it also destroyed the limitations I had accepted as normal for far too long.